Hello, 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 you amazing friends. This is your pal, Edwards here speaking, and I'm honoured to be live streaming today with the Brad Strydom. Brad Strydom, how are you today?
Ed, always lovely catching up with you as per usual. We're doing well. We got some good weather here in Adelaide at the moment, so it's been kind to us, so we can't complain.
Yeah, and I know this is bad on me. I've been watching too many horror films lately. I just had this image of a killer clown going past your window and moving on. I don't know what it is. I'm watching,
Somewhere
yeah,
there.
yeah, like a killer clown or like Jason or someone coming up and popping down. I'm watching too many
Okay.
horror films.
Too
But
many.
yeah,
Yeah, well, it's Halloween season, so I'm sure there's lots going around at the moment.
there we go. So we need a pumpkin there.
Yeah.
But friends, I just want to say Brad Stridom's an old friend of mine. He's an amazing guy. He's a health and fitness expert. He works a lot. He consults to a lot of companies. He does a lot of personal training, health and fitness. And he's a great guy from Adelaide in South Australia. And Brad, tell us where you're originally from. Tell us a bit about your backstory, Brad.
Sure, Ed. So my story started in South Africa. So originally from South Africa, and we've been living in Adelaide for the last 3 years with my wife and two kitties. And yeah, we just moved on to give our little kitties a better future here in Oz, and it's been good so far. Australia's been kind to us. It has been. Well, Adelaide's been kind to us, should I say that?
Oh, well, we love South Africans. So I live in a part of town of Sydney called Sydney's North Shore, and a few suburbs away is a suburb called St. Ives. Basically, if you're not South African, you're not allowed in there. So everyone is South African there. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I
So St.
have heard
Ives,
that.
you've heard about
Yeah,
St. Ives
yeah,
in
I have. I
Sydney?
have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lassie just yelled out, yeah, they're all Jewish as well. So it's like a Jewish South African area, St.
Okay.
Ives. So there you go. But
Gotcha.
great to have you with us. Now, Brad, now I'm just going to be honest with the audience here, right? And I'm going to launch into a bit of detail here. So right now I look very, very fit and healthy, but a lot of my whole life I've suffered from an eating disorder. I've always suffered from binge eating disorder. A lot of my life I'm really fit, but over the past few years I've really had a lot of problems with my binge eating, health, and that sort of thing. As I sit here, I'm doing really, really well, but I'm worried I'll revert. Brad, I'd love to get your thoughts on binge eating disorder, health, fitness, and tell us a bit about you. I just thought I'd launch into the darkness on that one.
Sure. There's a lot that you threw at me there at once, Ed. But
I know.
I think the credit to yourself for obviously walking that journey. I mean, I think overcoming things like that is not always easy, because we eat for different reasons, and who knows what that is. I always say that my clients that you can't use food to solve a non-food related problem, and often the problem that they have is a non-food related thing. So when we start to, and before we jumped on this call, I mean, we were talking about the importance of just being aware and mindful of when these things do happen. And you said it great a little bit earlier, is that when these things start to occur, when you start to become mindful as to when you're falling back into that kind of binge eating space, you just become, and we use a term, it's called notice and name, is that you notice how you're feeling, but then you also put a name to it. So it could be anything. Maybe you get a little bit stressed, and then all of a sudden you want to go veer off and you want to go to that pie shop or to that candy shop or whatever it is, because you want to start the binge eating. But as soon as you become mindful that the stress is the main trigger, then you can give it a name. You can give it a name instead of just going, oh, okay, and then I'm off. You can say, wait, hold on a minute. I'm stressed, and maybe because I didn't get enough sleep or X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it was just funny. I only came out maybe a month ago admitting I had an eating disorder. So, because what happened was, like, I've been pretty healthy most of my life in the past few years. I'm all right now as I sit here, which I'll come back to. But I realized I've got a problem. And I started being honest with myself. And it's like, Ed, you've got an eating disorder. You're suffering from binge eating disorder. And I thought, it's time to come clean and tell the truth. And it's funny, actually, when I first started telling the truth that I have an eating disorder, I was very nervous. But since I've come clean with it, I'm actually finding it much easier to stay on the straight and narrow. You're right. It's about admitting you've got a problem so you can deal with it. Is that a fair remark, Brad?
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that's the first thing is becoming aware of these things and giving it a name. That's what it is.
Now, you said something before that I love, which resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of people watching. If you just come in, smash that like, share, comment, say hello. One of the things that is, in my case, it's comfort eating. So it's I'm stressed, not feeling good for whatever reason. So then I'll eat chocolate or turn a food. So that's been, so you are right. I'm using food to solve an emotional problem. And you're right.
Correct.
Tell us a bit more about that.
Correct.
Because I know I'm not the only one who does that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely normal, Ed, for one, and I think that's where a lot of people fall short, is that they eat for other reasons other than needing to eat for sustenance, and a lot of it's got linked with, and I always, you can almost box these things. Stress will play one part, the lack of sleep will play another part, disorganized kind of in terms of your structure will play another part, and all those things can lead in all at once, all in one day. You could have a bad night of sleep. When you have a bad night of sleep, you wake up, you don't see the world as quite as beautiful as what you would think it is, because you sleep deprived. And that obviously leads to an emotional kind of down response. And then that can lead you to eating certain things. And the same thing applies with stress. And that stress doesn't have to happen on a day. That could stress be culminated from 2 days before, maybe a week before, a month before, whatever it is. Sometimes we don't know it until we put in that situation.
Wow, fantastic. Now, I want to ask you, you're a very handsome young man, Brad. You look great. How do you personally stay so disciplined when it comes to fitness and health? What are some of your own personal tricks that work on you that you'd love to share with the audience?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ed. I think the fact that I've been doing this for a long time, that I've set certain things in place. And I'm also very aware of how good I feel when I'm optimized to my best. And I always like to say to people, it's always good to have a reference point. Like, people don't know how bad they feel until they've felt really, really good. And what I mean by that is that if you're down here all the time, and you live on cheeseburgers, and you live on this, and you live on that, and you're not exercising, you don't get enough sleep, and you're always stressed, this becomes your baseline, and this becomes your normal life. But as soon as you step out of that, as soon as you start getting better sleep, you start managing your stress better, you start drinking more water, you start eating better, you start doing exercise, this is no longer your normal. This becomes your new normal. So now you feel amazing. But you can only know how shitty you felt down here until you feel how good it feels to be here. So when you know what it feels like this, you don't want to be here. And it doesn't take long for you to quickly realize, when you start exercising a little bit more, you start doing more walking, drinking more water, then you're back here and you go, this is how I like to live my life, as opposed to down here. So I think this is what I've become aware. I've been down here, and sometimes I do fall down here, but as I always know that I always feel better here. That's why I always end up going back. It's probably my secret, Ed. Very simple.
I get it. So in other words, you're saying, and I've been there, right? So we can sort of build our habits where we're addicted to burgers, eating food. We're not looking after ourselves. Is that what you kind of mean? And how
Exactly,
it all happens?
Yeah. Correct. I think that's it culminates over a period of time, and it happens incrementally. It doesn't happen all at once. And I think sometimes people they land in a humdrum of living a certain way, and that becomes their normal. They sleep deprived, but they just don't know what's affecting them, and then until they address that, then they can't know what it really feels like to be great or optimized.
Wow. Well said. So I want to ask you on this one, right? I want to ask you, and this is kind of comment is aimed at my younger self, right? And I mean, a younger self, I mean, a year ago. But what do you say to people watching that are living on cheeseburgers, they're living on bad food, they're overweight, they're not at their prime? What do you say to them to try to get their health back on track? What's your big advice to those characters, Brad?
Ed, the first thing I always like to, and I'm just going to put this thing out there, is that I never like to put morality against food. And what I mean that is, I don't like to put morality in food in terms of, and especially someone that's had eating disorders and things like that, or some kind of food addiction, is that we can't necessarily say that this food is good and this food is bad. So I always like to just paint the picture that it's all food at the end of the day. The second thing is, I always like to pose a lot of questions, because most people have the answers for themselves. They know what they need to be doing. They just need someone to probe them with the right questions. And that ultimately leads them to making changes that they will be making for themselves. Obviously with guidance and support, if you do get a coach or etc. But just to tell someone that they're probably going to need to go and do something in order for them to change their lives doesn't always work, because people generally don't like to be told what they need to be doing or what they should be doing. So by posing the right questions to individuals, you just get them to think about it, and that will ultimately answer their question. And people enter this stage at various stages. Some people are ready to change, like in terms of their contemplation in where they are within their journey. Some people just aren't willing to change right now. They just don't care. They're happy with where they're at, and they don't want to change, and that's okay. But eventually that will come around to a point where their contemplation will change, and they might be contemplating it. Something might happen to their life. They might go also to a cardiologist, and the cardiologist says to them, listen here, pal, if you don't change your life, you're not going to see your kids grow up until teenagers, and something like that might get people to change. Something as simple as that. So, yeah.
And I just want to check in with our fans. Thank you for tuning in today. If you're here watching live, thank you. Smash that like, share, and comment. Say hello. I've got my phone here to keep an eye on your comments. And if you are watching the recording, which you most likely are, connect with Brad, Strydom, and myself. It's funny you say that, actually. And I say I'm using this example with respect and tragedy. But I know, again, majority of my clients are women, and I help a lot of people that are divorced women. And I've actually known some of these women married, seen them get divorced, and seen them come out the other end. And what I've noticed is that you'll see a woman who's married, who's, let's say, not looking after herself, but 2 years after divorce, she's going to the gym like 3 times a week, and she's all super buff and toned. And when I was saying, hey, what motivated you to do that? And it's quite often saying, you could get an answer like this: hey, I want to meet someone else. I want to do this for me. Now I've got my own life. I've got no excuses. So it's funny you say that. It's funny how sometimes it's an external force that makes us really think things through and reconsider our position.
That's a great point you make there, Ed, in terms of how people would go through that phase, going through the divorce, and all of a sudden, now they're in the gym, they're exercising, they're looking after their health.
Yeah. And I remember this funny one. This is actually one of our wonderful friends, and she's actually very successful. She's I've known her for a long time, married with kids, absolutely kicking butt. And I remember I've known her for a long time, and she turned around and said to me, "I'm in husband mode." And she was telling me her backstory, right? She goes, "I'm now in husband mode," and she went to the gym, got really fit and healthy, and just basically put herself on the market, snapped up a good man, and then it's all good. So it's funny. I think you're right. It's what we want to do with our lives. It's our objectives. But I guess for everyone watching, some people just don't want to. Some people are happy with their health, and that's okay. But I think I like the way that you do it, because using direct force on getting someone to change is not the way to go. You ultimately got to get them to question their own behavior, don't you, Brad?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we always say that there's 3 words: people have to be ready, willing, and able. And sometimes they might be ready, but they're not willing and they're not able, or they might be willing, but they're not able and not ready. So they have to be all 3 in order for them to make some change. So that's kind of like are you ready, willing, and able? Will set the tone for whether people are willing to change.
I love it. That's really clever, Brad. So I was going to ask you, this brings to my next point. Next question I was going to ask you, right? And I'll ask this one differently. Let's say someone watching is really unhealthy for whatever reason, really overweight, they're not doing well, they're very, very unhealthy. Now, obviously, they should reach out to you and have a conversation with you. That's the first thing that they should do, right?
Yes, they should.
Besides reaching out to you, which any reasonable person would do, what do you actually suggest that they should do to get their health underway, besides, of course, reaching out to you?
That's a great question, Ed. I would say, depending where they're at, I'm always one for just doing the simplest thing that they're able to do. And like, people don't have to change much. I think a lot of people try and think they need to change a lot all at once, and as simple as it can be, like, I often sound like a broken record when I say this, is that you don't have to change a lot all at once. And invariably what happens is when people take too much on, is that if they don't, there's a thing called self-efficacy. So if they take too much on and they fail at that, then it doesn't help in terms of them building confidence to be able to continue with what they're doing. But if they take on something small and they're able to do that on a consistent basis, what that does, it gives them a win, which creates self-efficacy, which allows them to go, right, I can do this thing really, really well. What can I do next in order for me to slowly start to build? So it sounds ridiculously simple, but I would say that if people if they're not doing anything, like if they're not exercising and they're not eating well, I'd probably start with some kind of movement. Some kind of movement, does it, whether it's going to the gym or walking. And then I'd probably look at, like, sometimes you have to look from the outside looking in. Like people might have a planning issue before they need anything else. So instead of saying, listen, you need to eat this, you need to eat that, you need to eat this, you need to eat that, sometimes you just help them get organized in terms of their planning. So it's case by case. Everybody will have a different starting point when it comes to this problem. Everyone. Maybe sometimes you need to deal with people's minds before you even start getting them anywhere. You know, we work for someone for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, just getting their head right. You know, like, you can do this. You know, you're working around what are the bottlenecks in terms of, is it stress? Maybe you don't have to work on food. You work on stress first. Maybe you don't have to work on exercise first. You work on getting to bed earlier. That's your first thing. So I think everybody's going to be different, Ed, in this case. Everyone.
Yeah. And it's funny, I agree with you. You got to start on the little things, which is fantastic, right? I've been working on a lot of stuff, and it's funny, actually, people say to me, wow, Ed, I haven't seen you this fit in a long time. And my response is, thank you. I need to keep it this way. So that's all I can say. And I love where you're going. It's about the self-awareness and those little wins. Now, I want to ask you, Brad, for several things is, we've had a great live. Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy man. First, I want to ask you, love to hear any closing thoughts from you. And please tell us about you, how you work with people, how can they contact you? And if someone signs up with you, how do you help them and get them to where they want to go?
Sure, Ed. So I've got a program built. It's a year program, or a year curriculum. I call it a curriculum because essentially it's a mentorship, it's an education. But I work with people through that process. So depending on where they are in terms of their health, whether it's sleep, whether it's weight loss, I essentially start working with them one-on-one. We do bi-weekly calls to make sure that we stay on track, and we deal with all the other things behind the scenes and create strategies. And essentially we educate them on what they should be eating, when they should be eating, in terms of what quantities. That's the baseline. Then we look at all the other aspects of their life as well. So we work on the habit of sleep, we work on the habit of water. So we really look at the big picture when we're trying to fix people's kind of health and nutrition. I work in a personal capacity, and I work out of a gym in Adelaide as well. So if you are in Adelaide and you're looking for a training facility, I GM out there as well. So it's kind of two parts, Ed, from a one-on-one client basis for myself, or working through the gym as well.
Oh, fantastic. And of course, as well, you can look after people face-to-face in Adelaide, and of course, people can work with you online.
Correct, 100%.
And of course, what's the best platform that they can reach out to you on?
Without a doubt, LinkedIn, Ed.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah.
I would say LinkedIn is definitely there, as well as Facebook and Instagram as well. So I've got a lot of content on all channels as well. Good content in my mind, in my eyes. And yeah, you can reach me there. Thank you.
Great content. Yeah. But of course, I understand that you're on Facebook and Instagram, but we use and recommend Microsoft LinkedIn. So there we go.
For sure.
Yeah, but no, I gotta say, Brad, thank you so much. Great having you with us. Any other closing thoughts or any ideas that you want to leave with us to help us really maximize our health and fitness in the coming month?
Sure. As we go into the festive season, Ed, is the best diet to follow over the festive season is not to diet.
Oh, yes.
That's my advice.
Why is that? Why is that?
Ed, you know, you're going to be like, everyone should have a system that should be able to apply within the chaos. And when I say within the chaos, is within the social functions and the celebrations and all the rest. And I think it's a time for family. I think it's a time to celebrate. And it's certainly not time to go off the wagon, or off the kind of let the wheels fall off. But I think it's an important time to share those festivities over the festive period as well.
So as you're encouraging a level of enjoyable yet restrained, reasonable behaviour.
100%.
There we go. That's why we love you, Brad Strydom. So friends, if you are watching, like, share, comment, reach out to us. You're probably watching the recording. As I say, a big thank you for just being so amazing, everyone. Brad, we appreciate you so much, and thank you for your time. I know you're a busy man.
Thank you, Ed. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone that tuned in as well.
Love your work, everyone. Stay awesome. Appreciate you, winner.